everybody. Hello, my name's Karena Stipp, and thank you for coming today. Today, our topic is caregiving as a vital stage of life. And I think most of you know I'm a senior specialist realtor. I host these events, and today we have with us, freshly married, Trista Brodie-Parker with True Care Solutions. She has a bachelor's and master's, don't you? Yeah, you have a bachelor's and master's in social work. And she's also the founder and president of True Care Solutions, passionate about what she does, and has hopefully all the answers to all our questions today. So I'm going to invite you up, Trista.
Yes, thank you
and
so much.
We've got questions here. So let me start with, what are some signs you or a loved one might need some help with everyday tasks?
This one is definitely tricky. Again, good morning, everyone. Signs typically a lot of times is avoidance. A lot of them are very independent. Everybody's independent. They don't want anybody coming around. I always try to use a topic. I was here, maybe November, and I always have a person or we'll call this client that I just got, unfortunately, and fortunately, because I'll be able to help this family with the caregiving. I'll call her Miss Elizabeth. She was a caregiver for 30 plus years. So guess what? She did not want anybody helping her. So a sign is that, they kind of keep you away. Like, I don't need your help. I got this. Especially if you're the parent. If you're starting to forget things, if you're starting to have falls, forgetting important things that you used to love. I think that's a big indicator that you're going to start needing help with. If it's just a companion or someone to remind you, hey, we have this big birthday party for, so and so, and knowing that they love to invite people over and they don't. So it's typical things. To me, is stuff that we don't pay attention to, and I see it so often, like I said, with Miss Elizabeth. And again, that's just a made up name. It's not a real name, but she was a caregiver. She helped everybody, and now her needing the help has been a struggle. And I met her, matter of fact, a week ago, and it's been very hard for her daughter, who now needs help. So always look at those signs, the telltale signs you may not see right away, but over time they're forgetting important things like doctor's appointments, they're falling, or again, they're going to the hospital often for certain things. You have to definitely look at that.
Just one thought. I have a client currently. The house will go on the market next week. She's moving into a community, and her sister-in-law is my neighbor. Called me and said, we don't know what to do. Sister-in-law's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's at a pretty young age, 64. She was diagnosed. She's 67 now. Doesn't run in the family. And money has been the sign.
Yep.
So she, for instance, as power of attorney, thought there was a chunk of money put away, and it's half what she thought it was. And client doesn't know where it went. So if you're married, or if you're helping, a loved one, I would look for some of those kind of things and just kind of do some checks. She's also run up a little bit of credit card debt, and doesn't right, and she doesn't know where, where she spent the money. She can't account for it. She had a lot of extras. That's another sign. She had many duplicates of shampoos and lotions and so forth, and she just didn't remember what she had, and she would say, well, it was on sale.
Yep.
So I don't know if you can speak to any of that, but you probably see some of that, Trista.
I see it more than I want, especially now. I don't know. I almost feel like it's an epidemic with, I don't know if it's less socialization. They're not coming out to great places like this, where again, they're not social. So when you see those places, like I said, where they used to be very social and then they don't come out, that's a telltale sign that something's wrong. And it may not be something super major, but I always tell people, if it hasn't happened, we got to plan as if it will happen. Unfortunately, you got to plan. You have to have a plan in those instances. So like I said, duplicates, definitely money. Like people who used to be, my grandmother was, if one penny was missing, she could track it. But as she got older and with age, she would be like, "Oh, it's fine." She would slip me $20, and I'm like, "Grandma, did you mean to slip me this $20? I was just coming to check and see how you were doing. I don't need any money." But it's like those things that we miss again as they get older, and even before, because now with 64, that's very young.
It
That
is
is very
young.
young.
It is
And
young.
again, something happened. We always say, what's wrong with them is what happened. Something happened, and it could have been something traumatic like this Miss Elizabeth that I have. I think her years working in, she worked in mental hospitals as caregivers, and that in itself can be very mind blowing. 30 plus years, I'm like, whoo, in the hospital
It's a
for
lot.
sure. It's a lot.
So, what kind of help is available, Trista?
There's quite a bit of help. It can be help that you find through word of mouth, through your church. There's home care agencies that can come out for companionship or even hands-on. So if you need help with a shower, you don't feel too steady on your feet, you can have an aide come and they can help you with showers. They can help you with light housekeeping. They can make sure, that they remind you to eat, take your medicine. A lot of times, again, like we find you people again through word of mouth. So a lot of times home care, there is a cost because sometimes it may not, be covered under insurance. A lot of it is self-pay. So like I said, I like Miss Elizabeth that I just met a week ago, they found a church member that was retired who actually was taking care or had took care of her husband in this very similar situation, and she's retired, needs something to do. She's now helping Miss Elizabeth at her daughter's house. So
Just one other thought. So, this client that I'm speaking of is moving into independent living, and she qualifies at this point. And so the family's made the decision when she goes into independent living, she'll have the transportation she needs because she's still driving at this point. Today, she's driving. So she'll have transportation. She'll have meals provided. She'll be even though it's not a lockdown facility, she's not a wanderer, and so that's one of the questions you have to ask if it's a memory issue, if it's a cognitive issue. And so the family has a lot more reassurance that she has a safe place that's insulated, that she has checkpoints that
and extra eyes and ears, as
yes.
I say.
And then really the savings in her case, when she gets to a point where she's not actually on medication yet, she's trying to get on an infusion. But if she's on medication at a future point, when you're in a community like that, rather than have a lot of times it's several hours is the minimum for a caregiving company that comes into your home if you're a freestanding home. When you're in a community like that, they can do what they call 15-minute drive-bys.
Yep.
So they can literally just do a quick medicine check once a day, make sure that you've taken your medicine or your loved one's taken their medicine, and then they leave. So it actually saves money and provides that network of support. And it's enough for her right now.
I think community, I think that's my word for the year is community. I always say we're better together. So communities are always a great option, especially if you can have the resources or the means. I always encourage having that talk before you get, because you would want to know if you're not able to say it, what you want at that time, have it written out, have somebody that you trust that can help you make these decisions, because it's not easy making it when you're in the thick of it. When you're in the thick of it, you can't think straight. You're already having some health concern, especially with cognitive concerns. I'm always a key component, and again, sitting down talking with someone before it gets to the point where you don't have a choice but to possibly move.
I think, well, the other really key point about that, if you're talking about cognitive issues, at this point, the sister-in-law was able to come in and they've got power of attorney in place before she got to the point where she couldn't make her own decisions, the client. And so that's key. If you don't have that, or if you know someone, a loved one, a friend, a neighbor who doesn't have any paperwork in place, you've got to beat the clock. Otherwise, you have to go through a guardianship.
Going through the courts.
And it can take months.
And it's a lot of, to me, a process that can be very grueling for someone who's having impairment. Because like you said, time is of the essence. When you're thinking about resources, a lot of stuff gets tied up, and you don't want that tied up when you need the services like yesterday.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times by the time we get involved, things have happened. Not good things, like I said. I've had this particular client, Miss Elizabeth, had lost a lot of weight, was not taking her medicine, ended up having a seizure, like in stroke like activity because her body just went through so much because she was basically self neglect, unfortunately. And that's what it looks like to the courts, that you pretty much neglected yourself, and you don't want that. You definitely don't want that for sure.
So what are some typical costs? Does insurance pay for anything, and is there any help for veterans? So let's start with typical costs.
Typical costs for what I say home care, and you want to make sure that there's a difference. There's a lot of what I call lingo, home care versus skilled home health. So skilled home health is your physical therapist, occupational therapy, nursing. That's covered under your insurance, your Medicare, your Blue Cross, your Aetna, United Healthcare. When you're thinking about somebody coming in as a companion, maybe giving you a bath, that's not necessarily covered under insurance unless you have like a long-term care insurance policy that would cover those private, what I call care aids. You definitely want to make sure that you know what you have, because a lot of times I'll have families or people say, "Oh, she has Medicare," and I'm like, "But I see this United Healthcare card, so did you opt out of your traditional Medicare?" 9 times out of 10, that's what happened. So you definitely have costs, but it can be covered under insurance if you are on the skill side and your doctor, of course, recommends it and writes an order. That's covered 100% under insurance. The more of, like I said, the sitters or somebody with a companion to help you with reminders doing those 15-minute drive-bys, that could be a cost, and it varies per company, per agency. It's typically an hourly rate. And I know I've seen kind of in the past here year or so, it's been about, it can range anywhere from $25 an hour. Um, I've seen it as high as 40, and they do, some want minimums, minimal hours to provide for that person.
2 to 4 hours typically a
At
day
least, at
is
least.
what the most of these agencies will require. And sometimes they'll require 4 days a week minimum.
At least. And like I said,
Yeah.
you just got to find that right fit. Everybody, I always say, it's not cookie cutter, it's tailored to your needs. Don't let people force you into say, "Oh, you can get this package or this deal." Do get what's best for you and your situation, because everybody's situation is going to be different. For sure.
$30 an hour is probably the average here in,
I think
in the
so.
Triangle.
I think so.
Through an agency, a licensed agency.
You,
Yeah, Gary.
mhm.
Trista, do you
Well,
want to?
say that one more time with Medicare.
Medicare. What does Medicare cover and not cover?
Medicare only covers your skilled home health, meaning you need a nurse to help. Well, they can recertify you. So let's say you end up in a hospital, they can see you for a month, a couple of months, and then let's say you do better. You can always get that service back, but they have to justify why they're in. No, no. Like I said, weeks, months, it really depends on the situation. Like I said, I've had clients get what they call recertified, where Medicare says, "Okay, I know you had a month or two with them and they're still needing services. We're going to pay for that." So absolutely, they will come back out. You just need, of course, your doctor saying,
The doctor has to
the
order
doctor
it.
has to order that.
Any of those services, and they typically order it for X number of, like for instance, the physical therapist will communicate with the doctor and say, "I'd like to see 6 more visits," or "I'd like to see 6 more weeks."
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor will okay that, and then Medicare pays for it. Otherwise, they don't, and then you private pay, and you have to either go out for other physical therapy, or you would have to pay for someone to come in. They pay for
They
the
pay for all
visits,
of
but
it.
there's a finite number of visits as a rule of thumb. And what they're looking for is they want to see improvement.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not seeing improvement, then it gets cut off at some point.
Yeah,
So
they
there's a
have
point
to.
where you improve to this point, and then if you want any other, then you pay beyond
Yeah.
that privately. Yes, Ron. Yeah, what kind of doctor?
Your primary doctor that you see on a regular. So your primary doctor, I've had orthopedic doctors, like if you had a hip or a knee replacement, they've wrote orders for you to have physical therapy, occupational therapy. It's any general doctor that knows your situation, that can say to Medicare, and verify this person needs this service.
And for home visits, for physical therapy, for instance, or occupational, typically the person has to be homebound. So the doctor will write the order for homebound services to a threshold, and then beyond that, you should have improved to the point where you can go out for therapy beyond if they write the order for any other.
They will
so
definitely.
There's a difference.
They'll definitely want to justify why the services is needed, and a lot of times the clinicians are great about documenting accurately as to why. So it's people
They
do
are.
it all the time. They're awesome. I'm a key component in those type of services.
And so the last one here is help for veterans.
Absolutely. I work with a lot of veterans, and you have to get in. What I'm finding out with the lovely VA system is that you gotta be, again, proactive. You gotta go ahead and get in their system. Regardless, go ahead and get the ball rolling even before you need it. But there are services. There's what they call aid and attendance. There's even benefits for your spouse. Again, you have to apply, but it's all a process. But it's worth it, especially if you've committed to serving your country. You are entitled to those benefits, and we want you to get those benefits. I'm always accurate. Yeah, well, they actually will cover the cost. The VA and TRICARE, I want to say it's like TRICARE is like the insurance. It's almost like the Medicare for the VA. And we do use those. I recommend you keep those services because they will cover both your medical and even if you need like home care, any kind of type of service. But you do have to apply. You have to go through the VA, yes.
And it's a lengthy process. I have a client who applied in January for aid and attendance. Her husband served during combat years, so she's eligible. And her coverage is about $1,500 a month when she gets it. She's yet to get it, and so now we're 8 months in, and it's working through the system. And she checks regularly on that, but she has not received it yet.
You have to
and
stay.
She's needed it since the day she applied. So that's you've got, and it can be kind of. I mean, it's kind of cumbersome.
It can be very brutal. It can be very brutal. I have taken stacks of paper. I feel like you're signing for a house. Some of the paperwork they've requested or asked for, but me, the advocate, I'm gonna fill out every stench of it and I'm gonna, like you said, stay on them. Because again, it's something that you're entitled to, and I wish it was a better system that it didn't have to be this lengthy. Because, like you said, that's my biggest concern is that before you even get it, like you said, you already needed it months before.
Yeah. She's an accident waiting to happen. Yeah, and she needs that money to have help.
Yes.
Yeah.
They keep me busy. They keep me busy.
Okay, is it better to choose to have help at the current home, or should someone consider moving to a community such as assisted living?
Every situation is going to depend. It's going to depend on your support. If you have a great support system, a lot of times you make us stay home. A lot of times if you don't, even if you do have support and you don't want to be a burden on them, a lot of my folks opt to go to assisted living or independent living where they have more more caregivers, more support. But it's going to really depend on the individual situation. It's going to depend on what their needs are, both medically. A lot of people are on a ton of medicine. I wish that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day, that sometimes doesn't serve them. And that causes, the side effects causes more problems where they're a fall risk. They're constantly falling. Like I said, I have so many where they're on a first name basis with their fire and rescue and EMS because they're constantly calling them, and it's a concern. And that's when we start looking at, maybe we need a 24-hour like assistant living where somebody's there 24/7 that can help you. Because I'm not going to kid you, I've walked in, like you said, homes or accidents waiting to happen when they're trying to put something on. They're not sturdy. They're a fall risk, and they're trying to put something on, and they're not sturdy. I'm not sturdy. So I know you're not sturdy. Please don't do that. And just needing that oversight. So the oversight, there's pros and cons to it all. But again, it's going to be tailored to that individual. Like I said, there's no I don't think I've met in my 18-year career. I've had some similar clients, but they were all different in a lot of ways than not.
Well, and I think one of the considerations is current home. There needs to be an evaluation of, this lady I'm mentioning with the aid in attendance is not in a financial position to move into
Mm-hmm.
assisted living. She's willing
Absolutely.
to, but not able to. And she's in a split level home. So she goes up and downstairs every single day. And so she's a fall risk.
Yeah.
Her daughter lives out of town, so that's, you take a look at that, and then you're gonna have to take a look at finances. You're gonna have to
Yes.
take a look at, I had a conversation with a daughter at
Mhm.
one point who said, well, mom has help come in 4 days a week for 4 hours. And I said, so what happens the other 20 hours on the 4 days
Exactly.
and the 24 hours on the 3 days? And she said, well, exactly. And I said, it's a false sense of security, I think, for some, if they're at the point where, yes, the 4 hours a day is help, but is it enough? Are they wearing a pendant? If they're living alone, a lot of them have pendants, but won't wear them.
Nope.
Right?
They'll be across the room and they're
I've
over
had
here. You're like,
conversations
"How
where
are we gonna do that?"
one lady I can still remember, the box for the pendant was on the wall and the pendant was hanging around the box.
I've seen those too.
And she told me a whole story where she fell outside and she's yelling for help and someone wouldn't come help her. She could see someone off in the distance, no help.
Mm.
And I said, what about this? And she said, I probably should be wearing that.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Please.
Yeah. Yeah, Michelle. Yes.
And that's where the home health comes in, your doctor comes in. I always say, don't get me wrong, being a medical social worker, I'm probably not the best patient because I don't always am compliant when it comes to taking care of myself because I'm taking care of everybody else. But they're your can be your best friend, especially you get the right doctor who knows your situation. I prefer those again that work with older adults who again have that sense of again being proactive. I'm all the time just telling people to just get the service. I'd rather you have it and don't need it than need it and you don't have it. So those assessments where the physical therapist comes out, I've had so many come out to my folks' home, remove those rugs. Those rugs are a trip hazard.
Yes.
Occupational therapy, they buy them. I even have them. The grabbers, so you're not bending down. Use that grabber, pick that up if it falls, because we're gonna drop stuff. I'm a klutz most days, too. So again, it's okay. But getting those assessments, having those doctor's visits, you don't have to see them often, but see them enough where they say, "Hey, I need an assessment." And those home health, the nurses, when I say phenomenal, I even do a lot of, and I didn't mention this when I was talking about the different services in home, hospice care. So many people hear hospice, they think that's end of life. I promise you it's not anymore. Hospice care, I have so many now on services because not only do they help cover, and hospice is covered under your Medicare or your insurance. So not only does that take up, you have an aide that could come so many days a week. The nurse comes as often as need be. It helps keep you maintained at that current level, especially if you're like my mom before she passed. She was a caregiver as well. She did not work in certain things. She had already told us years before she got sick, I don't want a feeding tube. I do not want you having me here just because I'm here, just physically. And I'm mentally and, everything else is just in shambles. I want to be comfortable. So if she were to still be living, I would have her on hospice care because not only would they cover her undergarments for her incontinence, they cover other supplies like wipes, gloves. Oh my gosh,
Well, beds.
beds, equipment, like
Yes.
anything that I needed for a lot of my clients. And I just actually, believe it or not, just put one on, and I'm thinking about putting another client on it because it's a benefit that one they're entitled to through their Medicare or through their insurance. And it covers so much, and it's going to keep them in and out of the hospital. They do a lot of stuff in house, whether it's assisted living, whether it's your private home. they're there and they're on call 24/7. I can call and be like, hey, I need this. And they have a nurse on call or have somebody on call that can get to me within minutes or time. Call me and then come. So I always encourage people to, of course, reach out to us. We can get you those resources, help link you with those resources, because again, every situation is going to be different.
Can you speak to how it's possible to be put on hospice and then actually taken off hospice? And that's a lot
Yes,
of people don't understand. That's why they think it's end of
they
life.
still think it's in the life, and a lot of it is
It can be.
comfort. It can be a support, but I've had so many graduate, as we say. They've been on it for a year and they've actually done well where they discharge them. Now I've circled back and they might have had a 1 pound when I worked in facilities. They might have one weight loss, 1 pound weight loss, and we're like, oh, call them back, and they'll put them back on service because that's what was maintaining them, I feel. And they're comfortable, they're happier, they're more jovial. So many of them do well. And that's why I have to, dispel the myths that hospice is no longer end of life, is no longer end of life. Like I said, I've had some on for years, and somehow we're able to justify it. And thankfully they are. We have great clinicians that I work with every day that make sure that they work very closely with the doctors and they're able to justify those services. There are qualifying
Yeah.
factors, yes. So you do, again, that's where those doctor's appointments come in at. I literally, real quick story, I had a lady that I worked with. Unfortunately, she had a lot of hospital stays. All the signs for me pointed to hospice. But because we couldn't get into her my chart, we couldn't get into her records to look at a scan because they were like, Trista, we want to put her on hospice because if you say it, we believe you. We work together. But we couldn't find a qualifying diagnosis. Thankfully, she had 2 hospital stays within like 3 months, and they did a scan on her brain, and they saw the deterioration of her brain, meaning she was showing signs of dementia. And thankfully, they did those scans. Kudos to those folks at the ER, because they could have easily just said, "Oh, she's just having, as they say, it's normal aging." No, she's having behavior. She's paranoid. She's going through so much. And thankfully, we were able to find it and qualify her. And I think sadly, she might have made it 2 months on hospice. And again, it depends on the situation. But yeah, you do have to qualify. And of course, another doctor's order. You have to have an order from the doctor. Yes. That is true. They want to just make you comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean that if you get a urinary tract infection or some type of infection, they will treat it. If you, let's say if you can't do chemo. I think that was the one thing. I had a young lady on chemo and that she couldn't do both. But then unfortunately her body started rejecting the chemo, and we were able to get her on the hospice services.
So my mom was on hospice. She had cancer and she couldn't do chemo anymore, which the chemo had stopped working
Right,
anyway.
right.
She was allowed to do radiation,
Mhm.
and because it was in her bones, and the radiation actually helps with
Yes.
pain. So
Yep.
pain management is part of it. And the
It's
way
part of
her
hospice.
doctor explained it is that it was a fast track to the things mom needed.
Yep.
And it really was. In fact, when I flew in to take care of her at the end, for her it was end of life. I was worrying about, mom's best friend stayed, and we kind of helped together, and she had to be gone one day, and I thought, oh, she needs her medicine. How am I going to get her medicine? I've got to, I'll have to see if my brother can pick it up. And the hospice nurse was there, and she said, we'll just bring it to you. We'll just bring it to you. And what a wait. I mean, yeah. And so it's those kinds of things
Yes.
that you as a caregiver are taken care of along with the
I
patient.
always say that. I said that those type of services, home health, hospice, they not only help the client, but again, like you said, they help the caregivers. They do a lot of training. I literally call on them, even if we don't have a mutual client. I call on them like, hey, can I pick your brain about this? Or can we talk about this? And then potentially that can lead to, hey, Trista, we'll assess that client and we'll come out and we'll start services. We just need to know who their doctor is. Because I even have some agencies that will do the footwork for me. They would be like, okay, who's the doctor? Oh, we're familiar with that doctor. We'll go get an order. Don't you worry. You just take care of this. And it's like, where have you been all my life?
They're
Because
amazing.
it's like you need that. You
Yeah.
need that support. As I always say, we're better together. When we couldn't find that qualifying diagnosis for that one client, and I was adamant. You know, they joked with me about being the pit bull in the dress because I was like, I'm not taking no for an answer. Something's wrong. And I pushed, she couldn't tell us, but it was my job as her social worker, her advocate, to push. And when I was able to finally get into that my chart and see the scans and get it over to that doctor, it was like
Instantaneous.
let's do it. It was go time.
Green light.
It was go time.
Okay, so what are some pitfalls to avoid?
Isolation. Like I said, again, community is my word. Community, community, community. You have to stay connected. If you don't stay connected, you are going to struggle. I have so many older clients who suffer from depression, who suffer from, they're not able to work anymore or they're not working anymore. They don't have a sense of purpose. They don't have some type of motivation. Talk with someone, even if you don't have family or maybe even a friend that you may trust sometimes, because unfortunately I work with the courts a lot, and some families are not so nice when it comes to their older loved one or their disabled loved one, and we have to step in as third parties to support and make decisions for them. um, Keep someone and you trust. Write out your information. If you don't plan, you will fail. And that goes for everything. That goes for caregiving. Even if you may not deal with it now, guess what? You will eventually go through it either with yourself or with somebody you love. So always have things written out, what you want, what you don't want. I have so many people that they said, I wish I knew you 10 years ago. And I'm like, well, you know me now. So I'm going to do everything I can to better support you, because if not, you're not going to do good. And if you're not doing good, I'm not doing good. That's just how it works. Like, if you're in that state of woe is me, I'm lonely, nobody cares anymore, I have those, and we want to help those individuals. They're not alone. I always say, without them, we wouldn't be where we are. So I want to give them their flowers while they're still here. Don't isolate, don't shut down. It's okay to need help. Like this caregiver, like Miss Elizabeth, who was a caregiver for 30 plus years. I met her, and the first thing she told me was get out of her room. I got out. I said, I'm going to give her a minute because it was early, and she had already had it in with her daughter because her daughter wanted to check her blood sugar. Something as simple as checking her blood sugar set her off for the morning. So by the time I got there, she was like, get out. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And I went and proceeded to go in the room. And then her caregiver was like, she came out and she said, she's asking, is the lady still here? She said she thought she had ran me off. And she's like, no, she's in there. She's like, well, if she's going to come help me, come on. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. Okay. But me giving her that space, her wish is my command. Get out of your room. I got out and I gave her a minute and she came back too. But like I always tell people, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. So her having to have someone take care of her is hard. And her daughter, who is checking her blood sugar, which I told the daughter when she kicked me out of her room, and I came, and when the daughter was like almost in tears and was like, all I wanted to do was check her blood sugar. And she said, and I got the same treatment. And I told her, I said, okay, first order of business, we're going to stop checking her blood sugar. Because at this point, she had went through so much. It was trauma. So no more checking her blood sugar. We're going to work that out. Matter of fact, I think the nurse was there because the nurse referred her to me. The nurse was like, we're going to put her on a oral medicine because she was on insulin. We're going to teamwork this. Do not check her blood sugar. She is going to not be nice. And we don't want that. We don't want her agitated. We don't want her upset. We're going to put her on her oral medicine for her diabetes. We are not going to stress her out at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just not fair. And with her, again, the pitfall was that she alienated her family. She would not let them go to the doctor's appointments. I encourage that special someone that you trust to go with you to your doctors. Because a lot of times, I'm not, even for me, and I understand the lingo, you may not understand something. And sometimes you may be afraid not to say anything. Well, I say stuff, especially when I'm there with my clients. Can you break that down in layman's terms? Because we don't understand what you're talking about. But being there, being at the appointments, making sure that all is well. She was taking a medicine that by the time she got to her new doctor, because of course they switched, they had some discrepancies, and the new doctor was like, she doesn't even need this medicine. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like we're already fighting an uphill battle with cognitive deficit. Why are we throwing medicine at her? But again, that's the biggest thing is don't isolate. Always communicate with those important people. Um, I don't remember, I remember the client that I helped get on hospice and passed 2 months later. Her and her neighbor had this thing when she was living alone before she ended up going into housing or independent living with help. They would open their blinds in the morning, and that's how they knew that all was well for both of them. Now, if the blind wasn't open, guess what? You were to call or go over there and get like their son. They had sons, and they were very close. And they would say, so and so's not, her blind's not open. So that means she's not up. Something's going on. So again, that sense of community is such a help to avoid those pitfalls.
So this month's newsletter actually ties into that. It's your support circle who should be in it. And I think this is key. That's exactly what you're talking about is community, right?
Yes.
And so I think some people are able to form that, and I think you should form that circle
Yes.
before you are at some point where you might have cognitive decline. But if you know of someone or have a family member, loved one who has cognitive decline, then you need to be the one to make sure that you're safeguarding and that they have the right people in place.
Yes.
I have a client who sold her house earlier this year. All of her family lives out of state, and her neighbor, her old neighbor, was her medical power of attorney because she wanted someone local. Well, the neighbor unfortunately has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so she's no longer legally cannot be. And so she called me to tell me the story, and she was clearly stewing about it. And I said, I'm here for you if you need anything. And she said, well, I hated to ask, but I kind of, and I said, listen, I would just be the stopgap anyway for your family. So, I'm offering for you if you would like, and it makes you feel better, I'll be your local, and then you'll just need to tell me exactly what your wishes are, and I'll need to have all your family contact information so that I can notify them and they can be here in a number of hours. So I would literally just be,
I
potentially.
You're like the liaison. You're
That's
definitely
right.
the liaison.
And so, but
between
she's cognitively sharp at she's 88. And she's very sharp. So she knew enough to know that she needs that in place.
Yes.
And knew to ask for it. And
That's
so
smart.
that's where the family needs to know. She then, had the conversation with the niece, who's the power of attorney and executor and all of that, and said, this is what I'm thinking. And the niece had met me and said, I approve. I think that's a good idea.
Yes.
So I think those kind of conversations need to be happening. And your circle, if you have one, may need to change. And you may need to pivot, or your loved one may need to pivot if those changes come about. This was completely unexpected. She told me about this neighbor back when. And, I'd known all along that she had her in place. And I thought, well, good for her. She's got all the boxes checked, but that box unchecked. So, but I want to just point out, it's profound, really, what you just said about that the person is, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. That's profound.
Yes.
And I think if you're the person who's the caregiver, it can feel like they're giving you a hard time.
Absolutely.
It really can. I mean, been in those shoes, right?
Man, listen.
And had conversations with family members who've been in those shoes. But I think that's kind of take a breath, and remember that they're having a hard time.
They're having a hard
and
time.
put yourself in their shoes for a second and think, oh, I wouldn't want to be in this position.
That's it.
What would I need if I were in that position, and try to be that for that person.
It is vital. I've had families unfortunately fall out because they feel like, well, they're just being difficult. Well, again, our job is to, one, be neutral. We don't pick sides. I always joke about not having my referee. Like when I went in last week, I was like, everybody to their corners. We're gonna have a good day. Now it was pouring down rain, and I was like, nope. Everybody, she's in her room, and you go to your room, and everybody's going to take a breather. but you do have to be sensitive to the fact that so much has changed into so many years, retirement or no longer working to now on a fixed income or on a set income where again anything can happen and that can change everything. So don't feel like that it's the end all be all because like you said, things are going to change. That's the only thing that's evident is change. So stay on it. I stay ready. As I always say, I stay ready.
Be ready to pivot.
Right. Because every day you just like, okay, let's regroup. Again, like I told that one family last week, no more stinger picks. We're not sticking fingers anymore. The nurse was like, I totally agree. And we were not only supporting mom, but we were supporting the daughter. Because like I said, at that point, the daughter was almost in tears because she's like, mom is yelling at me and giving me a hard time. And I'm like, mom. And then when she told me her line of work, I was like, she worked Weir, Dorothy Dix for 30 plus years. I was like, yeah, she is, we gonna get through it. And the family was very happy. It gave them a sense of peace and security. So for sure.
So, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but differences and similarities between home health and home care.
Yeah. Home health is covered under your insurance. Again, that's that skilled nurse, physical therapy, occupational therapy. They do have aid service and they do have a social worker in most cases, even speech therapy if you need that, if you've had a stroke or if you need something going on with your eating. So home care is again that more what I call custodial care. So you're needing someone to remind you for your medicine, companionship. You want someone there to remind mom or dad to eat, to don't forget, we have this appointment. They're going to come pick us up to take you to your monthly appointment or your, doctor's office, or go to your doctor's office. So those are the difference.
Health is
paid through insurance.
Licensed care, and home care is custodial.
Custodial, yes.
Custodial. So you're the person who's the caregiver is giving care from a custodial standpoint.
And it's strictly that. It's not like again the nurse, the PT, the OT. It's strictly a caregiver for home care that is providing the care.
And that's going to be paid for by insurance, private pay unless you have a long-term care insurance policy. This is paid for by insurance, yes. Home health. But home care, unless you have a long-term care policy, this will be private pay. Yep. And this will be the one that is around $30 an hour here in the Raleigh area. Yeah.
Unless you find someone, like I said, like this family that found a church member, and I'm sure they were able to probably work out something because she's not through a company or agency. She's through directly.
Right. Then it'll probably be a little less, but doesn't come with licensed or bond.
No.
Yeah. So
you take that risk if you are willing.
Just understand if you bring someone into your home or your loved one's home.
Yeah.
Then there's not a company standing behind that's going to guarantee that work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Michelle.
I have a friend who's declining, and so a group of us have come around her. We call it her care team. And we pinch hit on different skills that we individually have or interests that we have. So some people cook for her, some people fill her pill box every week, some come and clean and change her sheets. And then we meet on a regular basis to check in with her. How are things going? What additional needs do you have? And then we divvy that up, that extra work, and say, well, I'll take that and I'll check in with you. I'll make that call.
That's fantastic. She accepts the help.
Yes, she knows she needs it and feels just extra supported and knows who to call.
The fantastic thing is that she accepts the help because so many suffer in silence and try to pretend that they're okay.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're great actors. They're great actors and
actresses. I mean, it's fantastic that the group of you are all willing to do that, but it's also fantastic that she's willing to accept it because that's a big piece.
Well, I think also it's a form of socialization for us as well.
Yeah.
So we don't connect on a regular basis, but this keeps us connected. Yeah.
Very cool.
That's that socialization piece. You can't beat it. I'm telling you, it is so necessary.
So we're to questions and answers. We probably like touched the tip of the iceberg all the way around. But who I know,
Yes,
and
and I
some
have-
of you have had questions already. But who has any questions? And I'll run the mic to you just a second. Let me try to.
Because again, I always say as my disclaimer is that you can't almost put everything in one seminar or one 30-minute or an hour presentation. I always encourage people to reach out to me, or I say, call me first, so I can at least point you in that direction. Like I said, if I don't have the answer, 99% of the time I do, but that 1%, I can get you the answer if I don't have it, for sure.
Can you say something about long-term care insurance, particularly the military one?
Well, again, long-term care insurance is a separate insurance that you would get maybe in your 40s, or like for me, I need to go ahead and get a plan, a policy now, so I could be able to use it at that time. So that's separate from your VA benefits and your TRICARE. That's long-term care was brought out many, many moons ago, again, to help offset a lot of the cost that comes with care. People getting older, people needing that support from another person.
And you'd have to qualify through your doctor in order to take advantage of the benefits of the policy. And each policy is different.
Each policy is different, and please, 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 when you're setting it up through that, whether it be a broker or a company, get it all spelled out. Have your questions, because we get those plans and we think it's perfect, and then when we get to the point where we need it, it's like, oh, you got to pay this up front first. Well, they didn't say that when I got it 40 years, 50 years ago. And I feel like that to me is just poor and misleading practices. As a social worker, you need to spell it out for people, especially if they're paying over time. Like I've had some people who are now in their 80s and 90s and didn't need it up until then, but now can't really use it because they're expecting you to pay 2,000 a month off the gate for them to even kick in to start paying it. So always, always, always talk to those individuals and make sure that again, you're telling them what you need and what you want and what you're willing to pay for, because that's something that you pay for on a monthly basis or a yearly basis for that program to be able to use it. But
And-
long-term care is definitely a good thing to have.
There's a new option that's available, and I think, you get to a certain age and then it's really not a great option because
Right.
it's so expensive, but you can buy a life insurance policy that has a rider. So you would have to have the insurance agent write the rider, and the rider basically says that if you become ill and you need to get to money to help you, like that would fill in for home care, for instance, then you can use the money that would have been paid to your beneficiary to use towards your care. So rather than just let that long-term care policy burn up if you fall asleep and never wake up again and you're at 92 and you never used a dime of it and you paid into it for years, it's kind of neat that you have the option of either or. So if you do fall asleep at 92 and you never use any of that money towards your care, then the money goes to your beneficiaries, whereas a long-term care policy just ends and all of that money you paid in gets lost.
Yeah, and if they're not willing, the companies that I work for, when they're not, it's a red flag for me as a social worker when they're not willing to disclose those type of benefits. If they're not willing to explain your policy, those companies, they don't have best practices, and we have to do what's best for you. You don't pay into something and then you can't use it. So I always say, please, please, please do your research. If you don't have it at a certain age, like I said, I think with me about to be 42, they recommend that I go ahead and get one now before I start, seeing, I guess, signs of me getting older. Because
Yeah,
they
they're
don't want
affordable.
That. They don't want that. They don't want you to need help.
That's right. They're affordable in your 30s and 40s.
Yes.
By the time you get to 50 and even tip over into 60, the price goes up and it's like a luxury car payment or
I'm
more,
about to say,
or
you
even
won't
a
be able to
house
afford
payment
it,
potentially.
and we're just,
Yeah, at least.
Mhm.
At least, yeah.
it's not. Yeah.
Other questions? Hang on just a second, Gary. Let me come to you.
I was just going to ask, I don't think we talked about her services as far as are we paying for that too somewhere, or how does that work?
It's a true care. We are first consultation is free. We sit down 30, 45 minutes and we talk about, and I'm pretty savvy after what we've been up and running now for 8 years, just celebrated a birthday in April. We know how to ask those main questions. So that 45 minutes is going to be spent on what do we recommend. We assess the situation, the individual, because everybody's, again, is going to be different. That's totally free. Now, if there's services that you need to be put in place, there is what we call a fee for service. So if you need to apply for benefits or get with your doctor and do certain things that we need to apply for, there is, like I said, a one-time fee for that. But a lot of times, if you have, again, that support and they're able to do it, I always encourage them to help you. That way they're in the loop and they know what's going on. Your family, your friends. I have a lot of clients that, no relation, but they will call me before they call their family. And I'm like, you know what? At least they're, like you said, at least they're calling. And I'll take it. So if they're not feeling well and they're not, like, they may not tell their loved one, their daughter or their sister that I've not been feeling good. They'll call me and then I'm on the phone and I'm calling the power, like, hey, we need to have a doctor's run. So
The benefit that I see with a consultation with someone like Trista is it takes you as the family member out of being the bad guy. You're neutralized.
Yep.
Someone neutral comes in and they say all the same stuff that you've been thinking and saying to them that they're not listening to. But because she has all the letters behind her name and she is the professional, the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, well, I guess maybe I should really do something. So to me, that's the gift in bringing her in. And then you're taken out of that position and you just get to be loved one.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of them are like, I just want to go back to being the child. I want to go back to being the son, the daughter, or again, the cousin, the niece. A lot of times, again, that's what I want them to, because caregiving is not for everybody. Everybody cannot do it. Some people just get overwhelmed, and that's okay. Because I always tell them, at least you told me. Like, I have so many that tell me, like, Trista, I can't do it. I cannot do it. And I'll be like, okay, you can't do it. What can you do? Can you at least make the doctor's appointment so we can get there? And I'll take them. Because they don't want to, it's just too much. But again, it puts them back, like you said, in that seat where they have a role, but it's not as I wouldn't say burden, because that's what a lot of times they don't want to be a burden, and they're not a burden. Like I told my mom, I'm like, you took care of me, I'm going to take care of you. And that's just the bottom line. But then she was like, you're trying to be my mother. No, not really. I think I was getting payback for being the child that I was, I think, because she gave me a fit. And like you said, she won't listen. She would not listen to me, but she would listen to the caregivers or the people that would come, her doctors. She would listen to them before me.
Because even though you had the
right, I've only been doing this for 15 years.
Even though you had that experience, you're still to her daughter first.
That's it. I was her daughter.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm the mom, you're the daughter. And I'm like, you are right. But right now, you're not making great decisions as it relates to your health. And now I have to intervene. And I always used to joke with her. I'm like, it doesn't look good that the social worker's mom is not doing good. So she's like, oh, it's fine. No, it's not fine. They're gonna call Adult Protective Services on me quicker because I know better. You're sitting here all day not eating because you have fallen in a state of depression. And I picked up on it so quick. I was typing that doctor so fast, like I need something to help her.
Other questions? That was a lot. Yeah. Michelle?
So this is a personal testimony. My father had dementia, and not to the point that we needed to move him out of the house. My parents were in their 80s. So this is about the hospice care. I just want to speak to what I call pre-palliative care. They were able to get hospice to come into their home once a week, give my father a bath, check his blood pressure, check his meds, ask him how he's doing, if he had fallen and had a wound, They would do some wound check. They wouldn't do full wound care, but they would check that. Gave my mom great peace of mind because my dad, he worried a lot about how he was doing, but the nurse could confirm with him that's nothing to worry about, or yes, we do need to have that checked. And then the nurse was the liaison back to the doctor. So the reports would go back to the doctor on what they observed with my dad when on that home visit. My dad actually got to where he looked forward to their visits because he had developed a relationship with them and vice versa. And they were a great help and comfort to us as the kids and to my mom as well. And I think what helped set us up for success with this was we had conversations when we knew he was starting to move into more advanced stages of this dementia. But we had conversations as a family and made decisions together that honored what he and mom both wanted, so that when it came time and maybe he didn't remember some of that, we knew what to do.
And by the way, Michelle is my assistant and is a gift to me and to you. So thanks for joining us today, Michelle. Bob is out. His family's flying in today, so he's out. And I asked Michelle if she'd come help out, and she's at the keyboard and doing a lot of that. So any other questions or comments? Let's give Trista our round of applause. Thank you so much,
Thank you guys.
Trista, for coming.
Thank y'all for being a great audience. Please, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. Like I said, I want to be proactive, not reactive when it comes to your care. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it. I always tell them, you're worth it. And we want to take care of it.
That's awesome. Thank you.